The paper coffee cup in my hand was still warm when my younger brother leaned across the courtroom aisle and whispered, "Get ready to be humiliated." And I stayed quiet even as something in me cracked, because why was he so sure the judge would destroy me today? My parents smiled like they were watching a show they paid for, and I sat there in silence while the Dallas courtroom filled with strangers who all seemed to know my name, like my failure was already decided. My name is Rowan. I am 36 years old, and I run a small construction and redevelopment firm in Texas. That morning, the federal building smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Security made me dump my bag into a gray bin. My keys clinked. My phone buzzed with messages I could not answer. The metal detector beeped twice before I got through, and every sound felt too loud for what I was trying to keep hidden inside. By the time I walked into the courtroom, the benches were packed. A couple of local reporters sat in the back, not the national kind, but the kind that live off public records and messy family stories. A few familiar faces from our neighborhood were there too, the ones who always show up when there is blood in the water. My brother sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, posture perfect, chin lifted. He looked like he practiced that expression in a mirror. My mother sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that was too clean. My father, Harrison, had his hands folded like a man about to pray, except he did not look humble. He looked satisfied. I sat at the defense table with my attorney, Pierce, who had the calm eyes of someone who does not get intimidated by money or last names. She organized our folders like she was setting a dinner table. Straight edges, no wasted motion. Her calm made me feel even more exposed, like I was the only one in the room with a pulse. Caught my gaze and gave me that small smile again, the one he used when we were kids and he broke something of mine on purpose, then waited for me to explode so he could call me dramatic. He mouthed it this time, slow and clear, so I could read it from across the aisle. Humiliated. I did not react. I just set my coffee down on the wood and folded my hands like I belonged there. The bailiff called us to stand. The judge entered, older, tired around the eyes, the kind of tired that comes from seeing the same lies in different suits. When we sat, attorney stood immediately. His name was Parker. He had a smooth voice and a face that looked expensive. He smiled at the judge like they were old friends. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a painful family matter. My client, mister, is here because he had no choice. He extended support to his sister, the defendant, and in return she abused his trust, harmed creditors, and attempted to hide assets through a web of shell entities." My stomach tightened on the word hide, because everyone in that room leaned forward as if they had been waiting for it. Continued, "We have evidence of diverted funds, invoices, and an attempt to transfer equipment out of state. We are asking this court to appoint oversight, freeze relevant accounts, and recognize the legitimacy of the debt owed to my client." Debt, that was their favorite word. A clean word, a moral word, a word that makes people think you deserve what happens next. My mother let out a soft, controlled sound like grief. My father placed a hand over hers like a saint, sat back, confident, and I could almost hear him thinking, "This is where she shrinks." Stood, "Your Honor, the plaintiff has built a story around big accusations, but the documents they filed do not match verifiable transactions. We will show that the supposed debt is based on a fabricated agreement, and that the plaintiff's filings include internal business details that were not public and could only have come from unauthorized access." A ripple went through the gallery. People love the idea of a secret leak. It makes them feel like they are watching something smarter than ordinary drama. Smile twitched, just for a second. The judge looked down at his notes, then up at me. He did not look sympathetic, but he looked awake now. "Ms.," he said, "before we go further, I want clarity on one point." The room went so quiet, I could hear someone shift on a bench. "You are currently listed as the lead contractor on a municipal redevelopment project tied to the Trinity Corridor, correct?" Face changed immediately. Not panic, not yet, but something like surprise that the judge had already looked behind the curtain. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "We were awarded the contract last quarter. Phase 1 is funded." The judge's eyes moved too. Then help me understand why your filings describe the defendant's company as functionally insolvent and incapable of performance, when the exhibits include public notices tied to a city-backed project. Opened his mouth, but there was a pause, a tiny pause, like his script did not have that line in it. Your Honor, he said finally, our information suggests the project is at risk due to mismanagement. That is why oversight is necessary. The judge tapped his pen once. Oversight is not a toy, it has consequences, so do allegations of fraud. Confidence wobbled, and it made my chest burn with something dangerous. Not hope, something sharper, because I knew why he was here. He was not here to protect anyone. He was here to take what I built. But the worst part was not the courtroom or the reporters or my parents acting like victims. The worst part was that someone from inside my company had helped them. I could feel it in the precision of their claims, in the way they knew private numbers, in the way they said out loud details I had only discussed behind locked doors. I had not told the judge that part yet, was saving it. Quiet revenge works better when the other side keeps talking. As spoke again, my mind slipped backward to the moment I first realized my own family was not just jealous. They were strategic. It started years ago at a birthday dinner at my parents' house, the kind with matching plates and forced laughter. Was always the golden one. He had the charm, the social ease, the way he could make my father laugh with a single joke. I was the one who worked, the one who built schedules, the one who stayed late. I thought hard work would earn respect. But I learned something early. In my family, respect was not earned. It was assigned. When I launched my company, I did it without them. No money, no introductions, just a small loan, a leased office, and a promise to myself that I would never beg for approval again. It worked, slowly at first, then faster. A storefront renovation, a small apartment conversion, a warehouse repurpose. Then, finally, the kind of contract that changes your life, a city project with real funding and real visibility. That is when started showing up more, offering help, asking questions, acting proud of me in public while taking notes in private. He would say things like, I just want to understand your process, in that casual voice, like he was curious, not hunting. And then, 3 months ago, one strange thing happened that I could not explain. A vendor called me and asked why I was moving heavy equipment to Louisiana. Louisiana. I had never said Louisiana to anyone outside a private leadership call. I laughed it off to the vendor, but my stomach dropped so hard I felt nauseous. That night, I checked our shared drive logs. Someone had opened my contingency planning folder at AM someone with internal credentials. I did not confront anyone. I did not accuse. I did not storm around the office demanding loyalty. I did the thing my family never expected from me. I got quiet. I started saying okay to everything, even when it burned. When texted, we should grab coffee soon, I want to talk about your growth, I replied, okay. When my mother called and said, we are worried about you, sweetie, your stress is showing, I replied, okay. When my father said, you know you could come back under the family umbrella and do this the right way, I replied, okay. They mistook my calm for weakness, and that was exactly what I needed. Because when people think you are weak, they get careless. Leaned toward me at the defense table, her voice low so only I could hear. He is going to introduce the loan agreement next. My pulse jumped. That document was the heart of their attack. A neat piece of paper that claimed had personally loaned me money with my signature on it. A signature that looked like mine, but was not. I stared at Hans as reached into his folder. Grayson's fingers were too still. He looked like a man watching a trap close on someone else, not like a man about to risk his own skin. The judge said, proceed. Vaughn lifted a sheet of paper. Your Honor, this is the agreement executed between the parties, detailing the loan, the repayment schedule, and the collateral. Hadley's hand touched my wrist once, a small grounding gesture. She stood. Your Honor, she said, before that is admitted, we request permission to question the foundation of this document and the chain of custody. The judge nodded. Granted. Vaughn's smile tightened. Of course. Hadley turned slightly, like she was addressing the room, not just the judge. We also request the court take notice of the filings submitted by the plaintiff within 48 hours of a private internal call held by the defendant's company, where a false contingency detail was intentionally introduced. Grayson's eyes flicked to me. Just flicked. But I saw it. The judge leaned forward. False contingency detail. Hadley's voice stayed calm. Yes, Your Honor. A detail that appeared word for word in the plaintiff's emergency motion. A detail that did not exist anywhere except that internal call. A murmur swept the gallery. The reporters looked up like someone rang a bell. Vaughn's face went a shade paler. Grayson's confident posture slipped, just enough to show he was suddenly thinking instead of performing. Hadley reached into our folder and placed a single page on the table, sliding it forward like a card in a game. This, she said, is where their story begins to fall apart. Quick real-life pause, this part is for me. Some nights I am editing and I want to quit, but then I see your comments and I keep going. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. All right, now let me take you back. Because the truth is, the leak did not start with the lawsuit. It started with someone I trusted enough to hand them the keys to everything. And I did not realize the betrayal until I watched my own words show up in a legal filing like a threat. And the moment the judge asked for the phone records tied to that internal call, I knew exactly who was going to break first. Because the person who betrayed me had been sitting in my office every day, smiling in my face, while sending my brother the knife he planned to use in court. The bailiff stepped closer to the rail, and for the first time all morning, I saw real caution in the way people held their breath. Because the judge was no longer listening to a family drama, he was listening for a crime. Judge Barrett looked at Mr. Vaughn as if he had just discovered a loose thread on an expensive suit. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Counsel, he said, if a private internal detail that was not public appears in a court filing, that is not clever lawyering. That is a problem. I want to know how it happened. Mr. Vaughn's smile tried to stay in place, but his throat moved like he had swallowed something sharp. Your Honor, we can only speak to what our client provided. And I can only speak to what I have in front of me, the judge replied. Ms. Pierce, do you have the recording of that call? Hadley's fingers were already sliding a flash drive from a folder. Yes, Your Honor. Along with the attendee list, the distribution list for the follow-up summary, and access logs from the company's server showing which accounts opened the contingency file after hours. The word logs did something to the room. It made everything feel colder. Reporters stopped romanticizing and started calculating. People love scandal, but they love evidence more. Across the aisle, my brother's leg began bouncing under the table. He tried to hide it by shifting his chair closer, but I saw it. I saw his jaw clench. I saw my mother's tissue pause in midair like she had forgotten her next cue. Mr. Vaughn cleared his throat. Your Honor, we object to the introduction of internal business records without proper authentication. The judge did not even glance at him. I am not admitting them as final evidence yet. I am ordering preservation. Everyone in this courtroom understands what that means. Hadley's voice stayed quiet. Your Honor, we also request a narrow order compelling the plaintiff to produce the source of the loan funds they claim were transferred, including the originating account statements and any wire confirmations. That was the first time my father's face shifted. Not much, just a small tightening around his eyes, like he knew the direction of the wind. Grayson leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something. I could not hear it, but I recognized the posture. The same posture from childhood, when he would whisper to my parents and then they would turn on me together, like a coordinated routine. The judge turned to Mr. Vaughn. You will produce the source documentation within 24 hours. Full chain, not a summary, not a screenshot, the actual statements. Mr. Vaughn nodded too quickly. Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Keller, the judge said, turning to me, You will preserve all relevant communications, internal logs, and recordings. Any deletion, intentional or negligent, will have consequences. Yes, Your Honor, I said. My voice was steady, but inside my ribs my heart was trying to claw its way out. Because a preservation order sounds clean, but it can rip open a company like a storm. It can freeze investors. It can spook contractors. It can turn everyday emails into landmines. My family knew that. They were counting on it. They wanted my business to bleed, even if they lost the case. Hadley's hand brushed my elbow, a quiet reminder. We planned for this. I had planned for it long before I ever walked into that courtroom. When I first realized someone was feeding Grayson private information, I did not chase rumors. I did not ask the office who was loyal. Loyalty questions only teach liars how to lie better. Instead, I planted truth like bait. On a Monday afternoon, I sent 3 different messages that looked ordinary. Same subject line, same tone, same harmless business voice, but each message contained one small, specific detail that did not exist. To Sienna in operations, I wrote that we were storing equipment temporarily in Louisiana while we renegotiated vendor terms. To Reed in finance, I wrote that we had arranged off-site storage in Oklahoma for insurance reasons. To Brooks on the development side, I wrote that we were shifting materials to Arizona for a short period due to a scheduling conflict. 3 states, 3 lies, each one believable, each one easy to repeat. Then I waited. It felt like holding my breath for days. I went to work. I smiled in meetings. I answered questions. I watched people's hands when they held their phones. I watched their eyes when I mentioned the city contract. I watched who flinched when the lawsuit came up. 2 days later, Hadley called me late at night. "Read their new filing," she said. My fingers were cold as I opened it on my laptop. I scanned until I found the paragraph. There it was, Louisiana. Not Oklahoma, not Arizona, Louisiana. I stared at the screen so long my eyes watered, not from sadness, from the way confirmation can feel like a slap. I did not confront anyone. I did not fire anyone. I did not even change the locks yet. The first thing I did was whisper to myself, okay. Because once you know exactly where the leak is, you do not smash it. You let it keep flowing while you measure every drop. Back in the courtroom, the judge called a short recess so the clerk could mark the preservation order. People stood, stretching and murmuring. Reporters rushed to the hallway to make calls. The air broke into moving pieces. Hadley leaned toward me. "Do not look at him yet," she said softly. I tried not to, but my eyes drifted anyway. Reed was in the second row of the gallery, not at our table. Not beside my team, not with my company attorney. He was sitting behind my parents. Behind them. He had told me he was there to support me. He had texted me that morning, "You have this, I believe in you." And there he was, close enough to my mother that I could see her perfume bottle-shaped silhouette in her purse as she adjusted it. Reed looked up and met my eyes for half a second. His face did not show guilt the way people imagine guilt. No dramatic panic, no shaking hands. Just a tightness around the mouth, like he was trying not to taste something sour. Then he looked away. Hadley stood and started collecting our papers. "Hallway," she murmured. "Now." In the corridor outside the courtroom, the sound changed. Less formal, more human, shoes on tile, low voices, a vending machine humming, a security officer watching everyone like he had seen 100 families pretend to be civilized, then collapse. My parents gathered around Grayson, and Mr. Vaughn like a little fortress. My father spoke in a low, controlled way, his lips barely moving. My mother's eyes were wet again, but this time the tears did not look like performance. They looked like irritation. Grayson turned and saw me in the hallway. He smiled like he had been waiting for this moment. "Rowan," he said, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "You do not have to do this the hard way." I kept my face calm. "Okay." He blinked. He expected anger. He expected a scene. My calm always made him hungrier because he needed me to react to feel powerful. He stepped closer. Sign the agreement. Hand over the project rights. Let us appoint oversight. You can keep your name. You can keep a salary. You can walk out of here without the whole city thinking you are a thief. My stomach turned at the word thief. Hadley's voice was quiet but sharp. We are not discussing settlement in a hallway. Grayson ignored her and looked at me. You think you are smarter than all of us, he said. But you are alone, Rowan. You always were. I held his gaze. Okay. His smile widened, but it was brittle. Good. Then meet us in conference room B, he said, gesturing toward a small side room off the corridor. 5 minutes. Bring your lawyer. We will finish this. Hadley's eyes flicked to mine, asking without asking. I nodded. Not because I wanted to settle. Because I wanted him to talk. Conference room B was small and smelled like dry air and old paper. A cheap clock ticked too loud on the wall. Grayson took the seat closest to the door, like he was used to controlling exits. My parents hovered behind him for a moment, then my father sat, while my mother stood as if she wanted the option to walk out dramatically. Mr. Vaughn laid a thin packet on the table. This is a reasonable resolution, he said. Confidential. No admission, but it protects creditors and it protects your reputation. My father leaned forward. Rowan, we tried to handle this privately, he said. You forced us to do it this way. I watched his face and felt something in me go still. The way he said forced, like I had dragged them into court, like I had filed the petition against myself. I am listening, I said. Grayson's eyes lit up at that. He thought it meant I was bending. Mr. Vaughn started explaining terms, but I barely heard him. My mind was on a different sound. The sound of Hadley's phone, tucked in her folder, recording. I did not look at it. I did not touch it. I just let them talk. My mother finally sat down, then leaned toward me. All you had to do, she said softly, was let your brother lead. You always wanted to prove something. Look where it got you. I nodded once. Okay. Grayson exhaled like he was winning. Sign it, he said, and I will tell the judge we can move on. You will be spared. Spared. Like I was a problem, they were graciously deciding not to crush. I picked up the packet and flipped through it slowly. My hands were steady. I made myself read every line, not because I needed to, because they needed to believe I was considering it. Then I looked up at Grayson. If I sign, I said, you will withdraw the claim about the loan being personal. You will say it was a misunderstanding. His smile sharpened. Sure, he said, whatever words you need. Hadley's pen moved once, a tiny mark on her notepad. I asked one more question, quiet and simple. And the internal details you put in your filings, the Louisiana storage, you will tell the court how you got that information. My father's eyes flashed. Do not be ridiculous, he snapped. Grayson lifted a hand like he was calming a child. Stop, he told my father, then turned to me. Rowan, you always do this. You always look for a conspiracy. There is no leak. You are just sloppy. You tell too many people too much, and now you want to blame us for knowing what you cannot protect. That sentence was exactly what I needed. Hadley's expression did not change, but I felt her attention sharpen like a blade. I nodded slowly. Okay. Grayson leaned back, satisfied, and Mr. Vaughn started to speak again. Then my phone buzzed. One message. From an unknown number. 3 words. He is watching. My skin prickled. I did not move my face. I did not glance around. But my eyes shifted, just slightly, toward the narrow window in the conference room door. A shadow moved away. Someone had been standing there, listening. My mouth went dry, because in a courthouse hallway full of strangers, only one person would be desperate enough to monitor a secret settlement meeting. The person feeding my brother information. The person who needed to know what I knew. Hadley stood up at the same time I did, like she felt the change in the air. We are done here, she said calmly. Any further discussion will be in writing. Grayson's confidence flickered. What is this? He said. You are walking away again. I looked at him, and for the first time, I let a little truth show in my eyes. Not anger, not fear, just certainty. "Okay," I said. We stepped out into the corridor, and Hadley guided me 2 steps down the hall, away from the cluster of my family. Her voice stayed low. "Your decoy detail was Louisiana," she said. "We know which executive got that email." "Yes," I whispered. She nodded once. "Read." My throat tightened. I had wanted to be wrong. I had wanted the leak to be someone new, someone disposable, not someone who had watched me build this company from a folding desk and a broken printer. We walked back toward the courtroom. People were filing in again. The bailiff was calling everyone to take their seats. Reed was in the same spot in the gallery, behind my parents. But this time, he was staring at the floor like he had dropped something and could not pick it up without being seen. As I passed, his phone buzzed in his pocket. I heard it. I saw him flinch. And I finally understood the shape of it. He was not leaking information because he was greedy. He was leaking because he was trapped. The courtroom doors closed. The judge returned. Everyone stood, then sat. Judge Barrett looked down at the docket, then up at Mr. Vaughn. "Counsel," he said, "you will present the originating evidence of the alleged loan now, not later, now." Mr. Vaughn stood quickly, too quickly, and pulled a document from his folder as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. He walked to the clerk and handed it over with both hands. The clerk carried it to the judge. The judge stared at it, then frowned. "This wire confirmation," he said slowly, "shows funds originating from an account under the name Alina Keller." My breath stopped. Because Alina Keller was my grandmother. And she had no idea her name had just been dragged into my brother's lie. My breath stayed stuck in my throat as the judge stared at the wire confirmation, then looked up again, slower this time, like he was deciding whether we were watching incompetence or something darker. "This shows the originator as Alina Keller," he repeated. "Is that correct, Mr. Vaughn?" Mr. Vaughn's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked to my father. My father did not move, but a muscle in his jaw jumped, the same tiny tell I used to see when he was lying to clients on the phone. Grayson leaned forward, whispering hard. My mother's fingers tightened around her tissue until it wrinkled like crushed paper. Hadley rose without a sound. "Your Honor," she said, "Ms. Keller's grandmother is present in the gallery." The courtroom shifted, heads turned, pens hovered. I did not look back yet. I already knew where she would be sitting. Alina always sat near the aisle, close enough to leave quickly if she needed to, but never so close that anyone could block her. She was small, silver-haired, her posture gentle and upright, like kindness was a choice she made on purpose. The judge's gaze moved toward the gallery. "Ms. Keller," he said to me, "does your grandmother have any involvement in your company's finances?" "No, Your Honor," I replied. "Not as an investor, not as a lender. She has never funded my business." I could hear my own heartbeat in the pause that followed. The judge turned back to Mr. Vaughn. "Then, why is her name on this wire?" Mr. Vaughn swallowed. "Your Honor, my client represented that the funds were sourced through family assets. It is not unusual for family members to assist one another." "It is unusual," the judge said, "for a supposedly personal loan between siblings to be routed through a third party with no declared role. It is also unusual for a document like this to appear without full accompanying statements." Hadley's voice stayed calm. "Your Honor, we can clarify that immediately. We have a sworn statement from Alina Keller's bank confirming no such outgoing transfer was authorized by her, along with a copy of her current power of attorney. Additionally, we have metadata showing this wire confirmation was generated from a template, not downloaded from a banking portal." A sharp intake of breath swept the room. It was small, but it was real. Even the people who came to watch me fail did not like the taste of elder fraud. My father's posture stiffened like a board. My mother's eyes darted. Grayson's skin looked tight around his mouth. The judge held up a hand. "Bring Ms. Keller's grandmother forward." The bailiff moved toward the gallery. I finally turned. Alina stood carefully, one hand on the bench to steady herself. She did not look scared. She looked disappointed, and for my family, that was always worse than anger. As she walked down the aisle, my father's eyes stayed locked on her, pleading without speaking, a silent command he had used his whole life. Alina did not even glance at him. She stepped into the open space near the witness stand, and the judge addressed her directly. "Ms. Keller, did you authorize a $3 million transfer to your grandson, Grayson Keller, to loan to your granddaughter, Rowan Keller?" Alina's voice was soft, but it carried. "No, sir." The word hit the courtroom like a dropped plate. Mr. Vaughn shifted. "Your Honor, if I may, there may be confusion. The account may be jointly managed." Alina looked at him the way a teacher looks at a student who is pretending not to understand basic math. "It is my account. It has always been my account, and I did not authorize any wire." The judge leaned forward. "Do you have any record of someone attempting to use your name or account details?" Alina nodded once. "Yes, sir. My bank flagged suspicious activity 2 weeks ago. They contacted me about a request that did not match my usual pattern. I filed a report." My father's face drained a little more. Grayson's hands clenched around the table, edged so hard his knuckles turned pale. The judge's eyes moved to my father and mother, then to Grayson. "Mr. Keller," he said to my brother, "stand." Grayson rose slowly, trying to hold his expression steady, trying to look offended instead of afraid. "Did you submit this document to the court as proof of a loan?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said, voice tight. "My attorney did." The judge's voice stayed even. "Did you know the document lists your grandmother as the originator?" Grayson hesitated for half a second. That half second was a lifetime. He glanced at my father, and my father did the smallest shake of his head, barely visible, like a warning. Grayson swallowed. "I did not focus on that detail," he said. Alina made a sound then, not a sob, not a scream, a small sound of heartbreak that cut through the room with more force than yelling ever could. "Grayson," she said quietly, "look at me." He did not. "Look at me," she repeated, stronger. He finally lifted his eyes, and for a moment he looked like a little boy caught with his hand in a cookie jar. Then his face hardened again, the performance returning, because that was the only armor he knew. The judge turned to Mr. Vaughn. "Counsel, I am going to ask you a question, and I suggest you answer honestly. Did you verify this wire with an originating statement from the bank?" Mr. Vaughn's face tightened. "Your Honor, we relied on our client's representations." The judge nodded slowly, like he had already expected that. "Then here is what will happen. The plaintiff will produce full bank statements, originating accounts, and complete chain of custody for every document submitted within 24 hours. If you cannot, this court will consider sanctions for bad faith and referral for investigation." My mother's shoulders began to tremble, and this time it was not performance. My father leaned toward her, but she pulled away like his touch burned. Hadley stood again. "Your Honor, there is one more matter. We believe the plaintiff's filings include internal proprietary details obtained through unauthorized access. We have identified the specific employee account responsible." The room sharpened. People shifted to see what would happen next. I felt my lungs tighten, because I knew the name that was coming. Hadley's eyes slid toward the gallery. "Reed Maxwell," she said. "Chief Financial Officer, Pinnacle Redevelopment Division. He is present in the courtroom." Reed flinched like he had been slapped. The judge's gaze snapped to the benches. "Mr. Maxwell, stand." Reed stood slowly, shoulders hunched, eyes red around the edges. He looked like a man who had not slept in days, like someone who had been holding a heavy secret and could not carry it anymore. "Did you provide internal documents or information to the plaintiff or his counsel?" the judge asked. Reed's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then he swallowed hard and said, "Yes, Your Honor." A wave of reaction rippled through the gallery. People whispered. A reporter's keyboard clacked fast. My father's head turned sharply, eyes narrowing, trying to calculate what Reed could expose. Grayson's face went white. My mother covered her mouth. Reed's voice shook. I did. I accessed files I was not authorized to share. I forwarded information. The judge's eyes stayed steady. Why? Reed's gaze flicked toward my family, then dropped to the floor. Because I was threatened, he said, by Mr. Keller and Mr. Keller Sr. My father half rose. That is a lie. The bailiff stepped closer, and my father sat back down as if the chair had yanked him. Reed's words came faster now, like the dam had cracked. They knew about my private debt. They had records from a prior company I worked for, a settlement I thought was sealed. They told me if I did not help, they would ruin my career, contact licensing boards, and make sure I never worked in finance again. They promised me protection if I cooperated. I stared straight ahead, keeping my face calm, but inside my stomach turned. I had suspected greed. I had suspected ambition. I had not expected blackmail, the kind that wraps around a person's throat until they do something they hate themselves for. Hadley spoke gently. Your Honor, Mr. Maxwell has provided a sworn statement. He has also provided messages from Mr. Keller and Mr. Keller Sr. confirming the threat. My father's eyes widened just slightly. Grayson's mouth fell open, then he snapped it shut, like he was trying to swallow panic. The judge turned a page in the file, slow and deliberate. This court is not a stage for family vengeance, he said, and it is not a tool for fraud. He looked directly at Grayson. Your petition relies on a loan you cannot verify, supported by documents now connected to an unauthorized wire using an elderly third party's identity. He looked at my parents, and it is further connected to coercion of an employee to obtain confidential business information. My mother began to cry, real sobs now, messy and uncontrolled. She reached for my father's arm. He did not comfort her. He stared forward like he was trying to outlast the moment. Grayson's lips moved, whispering to his attorney, but Mr. Vaughn's hands were trembling as he gathered papers like they were suddenly too hot to hold. The judge's gavel did not slam dramatically. He simply set it down, then spoke with a finality that made the air feel heavy. This court finds the involuntary petition was filed in bad faith. It is dismissed with prejudice. A collective exhale moved through the room. And given the evidence raised today, this matter will be referred to the appropriate authorities for review, including potential identity fraud, document falsification, and unlawful access of proprietary information. My father's face went slack. Grayson's shoulders dropped as if someone had cut his strings. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal and covered her face. Hadley placed a hand on my shoulder, a silent signal that it was over in here, at least for today. As the courtroom erupted into motion, reporters surged toward the aisle. My parents were swallowed by their own mess, trying to gather themselves while people stared like they were strangers. Grayson tried to stand tall, but his eyes darted everywhere, searching for an exit that did not exist. I walked toward Alina first. She was waiting near the side, hands clasped, eyes glossy. When I reached her, she held my face gently between her palms like I was still the child she used to protect from sharp words at family dinners. I am sorry, she whispered. I shook my head. My voice was quiet. You have nothing to be sorry for. Her mouth trembled. I changed my power of attorney last month, she said. To you, I knew they were sniffing around my accounts. I knew they would try something. I just did not know they would go that far. I closed my eyes for a second, breathing her in, the familiar clean scent of hand lotion and peppermint. Thank you, I whispered. Behind us, Reed stood alone, staring at his hands like he could still see the betrayal on his skin. I walked to him next. He looked up, eyes wet, shame written all over his face. Rowan, I am sorry, he said. I thought I could stop it before it got this bad. I nodded once. Okay, I said. He flinched, expecting anger, but my voice stayed even. You will cooperate fully with Hadley. You will tell the truth, and after that, you are done. His face crumpled. I will, he whispered. Outside, the sun hit my face like a clean slap. The courthouse steps were crowded. cameras and questions and loud voices, but I did not give them a speech. I did not need revenge in front of microphones. I needed truth in the right hands. I walked Alina to the car, then returned to my office the same day and changed access the quiet way. No announcement, no drama, just clean cuts. Reed's credentials were disabled, then reinstated under supervised access for cooperation purposes. Every shared folder was locked down. Every call was recorded. Every vendor was reassured with steady facts and official letters. Within a week, investors stopped panicking because the city contract stayed intact. Within a month, the licensing board opened its own inquiry into my father and Grayson. My parents tried calling. They left voicemails that sounded like new people wearing old voices. Apologies, explanations, pleas. I did not answer. Not because I hated them. Because silence was the only boundary they could not twist. 3 months later, I learned something in a way that made me laugh once, alone in my office. The kind of laugh that comes out when you realize life has its own timing. My father's company building, the one he always bragged about owning outright, was not owned outright. It was leveraged, deeply. The loan had been quietly sold to a smaller lender after missed payments, and that lender was looking to unload it fast. Hadley brought the file to my desk without expression. "You do not have to do anything with this," she said. I stared at the numbers, then at the address, then at the name on the note. It was the same building my father used to drag me into as a teenager, pointing at the lobby marble and saying, "This is what stability looks like." I signed the purchase agreement the next morning, not with anger, with calm. A week later, my father arrived to work and found a new notice on the glass doors, printed cleanly, professionally, and legally. Property management has changed. Please contact the new owner for access arrangements. His calls came in waves after that. My mother, too. Grayson sent messages that swung between rage and begging. I did not reply. I sent one letter. One, through Hadley. Quiet, formal, no insults. Just a single enclosed document attached to the lease renewal options. And on the cover page, above the legal language, I included one sentence in quotation marks, credited to its source, with the date and location. Get ready to be humiliated in front of everyone.